pretty bad. So you're gonna still watch it though? Okay. So let's take a look at the schedule. May 9th. So we are now officially caught up from me being sick that one day. You okay? Bless you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Allergies?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are now finally caught up from me being sick that one day. And hopefully, well, let's say it like this. We will be able to start having lab time now. Yay! Right? Instead of trying to rip through everything. But when mostly we had been working on stuff in the dashboard and then getting our theme set up and that kind of thing. Again, we should have had lab last week. My apologies that we were not able to have lab. And so the assignment that was due at the end of last week, creating your theme from your template. Remember, I gave you till today to get that done, so everybody's got that done. Great, so I will be, again, how I'm checking assignments is I'm going to my handy dandy little client staging area of my own, and now I will be starting to check off assignments as well. Yes?
Is it okay that our images aren't exactly working at
Yeah.
the moment? Okay.
All I care about is that you are getting the code and stuff
Okay.
up and running. In other words, if the assignment is, so the create your theme from a template assignment,
Mhm.
I want you to have, again, all of your index.php working, your, again, for those of you at home that have no idea what I'm pointing at, I want your index.php file to be working. I want your main styles to be working, your functions.php, the screenshot for your theme, and then adding the blog info, body class, WP head, WP footer, then create the loop. And with the loop, I do want you to experience using the title function and then the permalink function and the content. What?
FYI, this is tile.
Mark,
Got it.
please, you got that? Okay.
So I didn't have any problems with any of this
Right.
except the functions.php. I literally had no idea what to put in it. I have everything, but I didn't. I even uploaded a blank document.
Sure.
Functions.php.
So let's review that.
Okay.
So, because I'm guessing,
Mhm.
I'll bet you other people have questions as well. So if we take a look, now in my functions file, then I have the register the nav menus function that we did this past week.
Mhm.
And so if we look at the, well, let's put it this way. So in terms of this assignment here, when we talk blog info, body class, WP head, WP footer, the loop, the tile, which I really mean the title,
Mhm.
the permalink, the content functions. So if I then go and look at what I did in my theme, now I've already broken it into the template pages being header, footer, page, single, etc. But if we go to header, right, I want you to then have the blog info style sheet function. I want you to then have your WP head function. I want you to have your body class function. If you have an image, let's say like that toggle image, that I needed to use the template directory function to put that image in there. Now, if you have images like in the body section of your page that are kind of wonky in terms of the responsiveness, like when I was putting together my prototypes and we went to my, whoops, let's go back to the 16. spring 16. So when I went to the About section here, remember when I had a large file size and it wasn't working completely responsively? That is because there are things in the style sheet that are missing, possibly, that we haven't worked on yet. So we will take a little bit more in-depth. In other words, right now this is a medium-sized image. When we get to doing our thumbnail images for our blog feed, we are going to revisit the image. Let me just log in and show you what I'm talking about. And there might have been something else that I missed that we can revisit here in a second. So when we go to settings, media, right now, these settings right here, you may not have them set correctly in terms of large, thumbnail, and medium. We are going to reset those when we start doing our lecture where, so on the demo, when we go to blog, when we start doing our thumbnail images here, we are going to reset those media sizes and then regenerate thumbnails, right? So it's possibly, excuse me, it's possibly a result of that. The long and short of it is, that is, oh man, my style sheets stuff isn't working 100% flawlessly. That's not what I'm grading. What I'm grading is that you have all your functionality and you have all the WordPress functions in their proper place and everything kind of built correctly. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, the way that you listed it out, actually up there, where you mentioned the loop first, because I went to YouTube. There's
Okay.
lots of really helpful stuff on the loop.
Okay.
It made sense, but I didn't, like, I got everything 1, 2, 3, and 4 on there, and then I did the other ones, but I didn't know what went in the functions file.
Right now in the functions file then, so the nothing goes in the functions file until then we get to this assignment that we did last week, where we have to then register our nav menus, right? And that's where, have you gotten to doing that yet?
No.
Right, so then, so that assignment is due at the end of, so if we go back to the schedule here, then that assignment, create your main and submenu, create the template files, is due then at the end of this week.
Right.
That you'll have lab on Wednesday to as well troubleshoot anything.
Okay, because I was a little worried. I'm like, I watched everything,
Right,
and I didn't know what to.
Right. So
Okay.
again, everybody, for you listening at home, we will have lab this Wednesday where Mark and I will be here to sit down with you guys so that you can say, hey, this ain't working correctly. I need a little bit of help, right? So does that help, Nico? Great. But let me actually, now that I'm thinking about it, let's kind of backtrack for a second. And when I said we were talking about creating your template files, creating a WordPress theme from a template, possibly if you then right here, so when we made our style sheet, go to our style.css. I didn't implement it in my style sheet just yet. but maybe part of the problem that you are then experiencing is, see where it says WordPress generated classes right here on that link? If we look at that, this is, do you remember when I was talking about the whole align left, align right, align none, that kind of stuff, right? There are then especially this stuff right here, align none, align center, align right, align left. The align right and the align left specifically are the ones that then have float right and float left on them, which is going to be important. And we can get to that when we, so for instance, if I look at this featured image here that I'm using as the thumbnail for my blog feed, and I inspect element, then I have it attachment thumbnail where I have it floating left, right? Another way to do that is when you let's go to my about page here, this medium sized file. If I go into edit page then, and I select this, and if I say align left, which I didn't align left, but if I do, and see how it's supposed to float around, the text is supposed to float around that. If I update it then, and I go and view page, the text is not floating around that, because if I inspect elements, see right here where it now puts a div attachment around it, and it says align left right there. If I go to my style sheet, so if I make a section here, begin WordPress core, and when I'm saying WordPress core, that might be, let's just say begin WordPress styles. I don't want to use the terminology core because, Jonathan, what's the first rule about WordPress core?
Not mess with WordPress core.
Right. Second rule, Anna?
Don't mess with WordPress core.
Thank you. So basically, if I wanted then, it would help if I commented things correctly. So if I went back then to here, WordPress generated classes, that's where I would want to use align right and align left. Okay, so I'm just going to go back here then and say align left, float left, line right, float right. Now that I've done that, so that's where I should say begin WordPress generated styles in WordPress. Generated styles. Okay, so now that I've done that, if I refresh this, now it floats around there, okay? And I could then even go further and say margin, top, right, bottom, left. Bottom, let's do 5 pixels. Same thing here. Margin, top, right, bottom, left. Meaning that if I have something aligned left, top, right, I want it to sit from the right edge. If I have something floated right, I want it sitting 20 pixels top, right, bottom, left. I want it 20 pixels away from the left edge. So now if I go and I look at that, then it should push that away 20 pixels, right? So that's something that apparently I probably forgot to get to when we were talking about the style sheet. It's up to you. What I typically do is I look at this as a guideline for this stuff. I absolutely always put in a line right and a line left. But beyond that, what I typically do is as I am previewing stuff, and let's just take this image for example. As I am previewing, I just closed my inspector. As I am previewing stuff, then what I have a tendency to do is just inspect stuff here in the inspector and see what the classes are that WordPress kicks out, right? So as I'm building my theme then, so just the same way when we were talking about the navigation, if I'm in the About section and I inspect that, that's where this menu item then has on this list item things like current menu item, that's the style then that I would use to make that anchor tag, current menu item, that anchor tag stay highlighted as the "you are here" state, right? So I just have a tendency to continuously inspect elements and see what WordPress generated classes are being kicked out. And then once I figure out what's being kicked out and how I want to use it, then I will put that into my style sheet. But why? So why did I put that style then? Again, if we look at how I organize my style sheet, I have middle. Inside middle, I have content and sidebar. So look at that. I kind of made a mistake of where I put it. Not necessarily a mistake, but if I want to organize my style sheet correctly, kind of what I'm doing then is, well, those images or those pieces of content that are going to be using style are found within the content element. So therefore, if I'm organizing my style sheet correctly, I'm going to put that in logical order inside the content area or where it is organized in my style sheet. Makes sense? Okay. Does that help, Nico?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It does.
does that help? We missed that. Again, I'm not perfect. I miss things. And if I miss things, ask me the questions. And just go over it. Okay. What we are going to do today then is, so that was our navigation. We go back to the schedule, May 9th. Creating a static homepage with multiple loops. Read Friedman, chapter 8 and 16. Are you guys reading that Friedman book? Like I said, this is a new book that I'm using this time around, and it really goes into the stuff that I've been lecturing on, right? So, because I know all of you read the books that you're supposed to. I don't have to question you on that. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I realized when I was looking at this lecture before class that we already did a portion of this last week. So if we review, creating the template files for our WordPress theme, meaning once we started building our theme and we started putting the functionality into our theme, then we had to separate things out into our include files. And we started by making the document header, header.php, where we put everything from the doc type and possibly our navigation system. We then created footer.php, which is where we closed up the end of our page. Everything possibly from the ending content div to our copyright statement here, to the WP footer function, the closing body, and the closing HTML tags. And then we also did our sidebar, which is the place where we had our sub-navigation. And depending on the way you want to do your sub-navigation is up to you. Again, if we look at the assignment for sub-navigation, creating the main and sub-menu systems. I want you to, in your sidebar, use the WP list pages function. And if we looked at the example that I did, we opened up sidebar. I basically said, well, here's my sidebar. That's where I need my sub-navigation to go. Utility that apparently just likes to randomly mute the microphone on me. So if I don't catch it, you know, thanks to students like Milo that catch that stuff for me. So going back to then, so here is then my sub-navigation. So if I go under the portfolio section, then in my sidebar, I have logos, print, and websites. If I go to my blog section, then I have articles, case studies, and tutorials. So in my sidebar file, my sidebar.php, in my element called sidebar, then I'm using the WP list pages function, both if we're on a subpage, meaning if the page has a parent, or if we're on a gateway page, if it doesn't have a parent. We're also then using the list categories function to say if we're not in a set of pages, then use the list categories. Again, how you want to modify this whole sidebar thing, as long as you're using list pages, list categories, and it works appropriately, case closed, right? Then what we did is we chopped things then even further into, let's use index, pages, or page.php, single.php, and lastly, front page.php, okay? And I asked you to tag your files so that you can start seeing if and when you are anywhere in your site, hey, this is using the template. Excuse me. My allergies are going haywire myself. So this is using front-page. If I then go to my about page, it's using page.php. I'm good. I'm so used to just not running everywhere, you know, that it doesn't even phase. I'm a boy. I have little boys my own. You don't want to see what's hanging off them all the time. So if we then go to the blog feed, again, the blog feed uses index.php. And if we look at a blog posting, it then uses single.php. So right now, if we go to our blog feed, currently we have 1, 2, 3 postings, right? So if I look at, let's say, my business site, and I go to the blog page, you can see I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then after 5, it goes to a different page, right? On the home page then, this is where I'm taking those same blog items. So these individual blog items, if I go to any one of those, here it is, search engine optimization, etc. So if I go back a page and we are on the root part of the blog here, those blog items then are fed into this page. They are then being displayed with the headline, the byline, an excerpt, and a full story link. So if I go to the full story here, and we can see the full blog posting, and I'm actually going to log into my site here. Notice, first try mark. I'm getting good at remembering my passwords, right? So if I go to edit post, I have, again, the content, I have the title, and I also have what is called now the excerpt, right? The excerpt is basically, well, if you read right here, excerpts are optional, handcrafted summaries of your content that can be used in your theme, okay? We are going to use those excerpts in our themes down the road for our if we go to the demo, my original demo, eventually for our blog feed, we are going to use that excerpt and pull that excerpt, okay? And we're going to pull the title, we're going to pull the byline with the category and put a read more link in there, okay? But for today, what we're going to do then is a lot of times then on the home pages of business websites or whatever, again, I'm doing the same thing here where I have the title, the byline, the excerpt, and the full story link. Notice as well, I have the original text from the home page, meaning if I go to edit this page, there's that original text. If I look at the code for said page, my Premium Design Works theme. How many of you are sniffing through my GitHub? All of you should be. Okay. So again, I used the wrong file name here. I did it a long time ago. Mark was supposed to fix it last week. He never got around to it. What? You weren't supposed to do anything. Okay. But if I then, in my content area for my home page, I have loop 1. So if I go then to front dash page here, what we did was, here's loop 1. I can even comment this out. Start loop 1 that pulls the SEO text. Right? And again, our loop to review, if there are postings, while there are postings, get the ID of the post, and if we say then get the title for that posting. Get the content for that posting, etc. Does that make sense? Okay. So therefore, if I go to my, again, pay attention on the Spring 16 versus the original demo. I'm going to close the original demo at this point in time. So if we go to the home page of my Spring 16 one, my front page then is getting the content out of the text editor for my home page. But what if, and I just totally closed the demo that I need to refer to now, Jonathan, thank you very much. Milo, you should be telling me when I should and should not be closing tabs, please. This one I need to stay open. So if this is then my SEO text, what if I want bullet points of my latest postings? Does that make sense? So that if I want to feed in the titles of my latest postings, that then go to said posting, posted by, etc. Okay. This is where I would need to content. Well, first and foremost, this is where I would need to open up my home.html template page. So remember when I made you do template pages and I said, well, the thing with the template pages is that you're going to have your main HTML page that then is kind of divided into your content area, that then you have a text area, and you have a sidebar area. Your home.html page is where, if we open that up, that's where you're going to have your flex slider. okay? So because in this template, the flex slider goes right after the end of the middle div tag. That's just the way I've set mine up, right? If I look at my front page, this is where I have the text area, the content area, okay? Well, if I go to header, this is where I have the end of my middle div tag. So what I want to do then is basically take the markup of everything on my home page within my middle, excuse me, within my middle tag. In other words, what do I want to do? What's the end goal here for my theme? This is where I want to have that flex slider, and I want to have these 3 widget boxes. So previously, when I told you guys to, how many of you really made sure that you had a area for a flex slider and 3 widget boxes on your homepage template because you did it right, if that's the way you did it?
No.
Okay, you have ground to make up then. That's fine. Again, as long as you have the functionality in there, I don't care if they're 3 widgets across, I don't care if they're stacked,
Okay.
as long as you're able to pull in the blog feed, right? But what I'm going to do is then I'm going to go back to my front page here, and inside my, in case I did that too fast, inside my middle div tag, which basically is between my header and footer, I'm going to paste in the markup of my flex slider and my widgets. Now, in my widgets, this is where I have the About Me headline and the paragraph tag for my content, which is the content from the loop that we did the other day. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of that stuff out of the loop there. And this is where because I have those 3 boxes across, section, class, widget item, section, class, widget item, section, class, widget item, I want then my content for my home page to go in the first widget, right? So I don't need this one up there anymore because that is legacy from my main page templates. Does that make sense? Hopefully. The long and the short of it is, you need to put the layout of your home page templates into your front dash page PHP file. That's the long and the short of it. So now, because previously in my templates, because I was basically using a sample from another class, if I looked in my style.css, that's where previously I had those widget items, right?
Can you say that again? You put the front dash page PHP in.
Here's, yeah, so let me kind of say it like this. For those of you at home, I'm drawing on the board, and this is the one thing that's kind of bad about you skipping class, and this is telling you how I can bust people for skipping class, is they don't get to see what I'm going to draw up on the board for Nico, because Nico is showing up for class. So, we had home.html. We had home.html as our template, right? We had main.html as our template. So in my design, what I had was logo, navigation, a flex slider, and 3 widget boxes. For my main.html, should I take pity on the people at home and show them my drawing? Because I can
Yes.
switch the camera.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Because you're going to watch it later, aren't you?
What would you 20?
Camera. Maybe I can't switch it back to camera. Ooh, wait. There we go. But then it's backwards. It's a mirrored image.
Better than nothing.
Better than nothing. Well, those of you at home,
Left or right?
Can you zoom in?
I don't think I can, but at least they can see the whiteboard drawing up here. Okay. So if I then say logo, headline, content, sidebar, and my navigation, right? So basically what we did, Nico, already, is we took main.html and we converted that into index.php, right? Where then this right here is where we did our typical loop.
Mhm.
Yeah, they'll be able to see that at home. Okay. This right here for our sidebar is where we did our list pages function, right?
Mhm.
Then what we did is we converted index.php because we had then chopped it up into header and footer, et cetera. And we then converted that into page.php, single.php, and then front-page.php. And we also took this and converted it into sidebar.php. Then we have to kind of backwards engineer front-page.php to incorporate then our homepage layouts. That's where I opened up home.html and grabbed the content area or the meat and potatoes area, the middle section, to then modify front-page.php. Because in our front-page here, and don't worry, I'll take a picture of this and post it on my site too, right? Because what I can do is I take pictures of these, upload it to Flickr, and send it through my site for the class. Web design. UI. Nah. Does everybody know that I'm being observed right now? Sorry, I don't mean to call you out, Tanya. Right? Everybody knows that? Everybody's watching their language today? Jonathan?
Right.
Yeah, I know. Good call. So what we are going to do then here for our SEO text, this is going to be then loop 1. This where we feed in our news items that's going to be loop 2. Okay, does that make sense, Nico?
Mhm.
Okay, so therefore, and again, those of you at home, I'll take a photo of this and feed it through my site in a bit, but you all should come to class. No, we're going back to screen view. I know. This is actually pretty cool. If I can just, toggle between screen and whiteboard view and watch myself on a delay over there, and man, I've gotten fat. Yes. It's just not right. Okay. So therefore, in front dash page, that's where I have my flex slider, and I have those widgets where I took the loop that I already wrote and put it in my widget item, my first widget item. Okay. So if I save this, we go back to then Spring 16, and we go to the home page. Here is then that SEO piece of text, and currently this is the temporary set of list items. My flex slider.
Mhm.
To make sure that it runs.
Say that again.
We need to put the function in there to make it run.
Correct. To be more specific, if I look at my image path, right, that path doesn't exist any longer because it needs to look in this images folder, in the WEB170 folder, in the themes folder, in the WP content folder. So what function? What argument through blog info? Template directory. Don't forget to put that slash after. Don't ever forget slash. He's the best guitar player ever. Don't argue with me. Okay, Eddie Van Halen might be the best, but I'm going to move on from this conversation. So now if I put that in there correctly, yay, my flex slider works. Okay. And later on, I'll show you how to upload photos to your home page and pull those as a flex slider. But in the meantime, now what I need to do is I need to replace those list items. Okay. Or put loop 2 here. Okay. So, Milo, did you have a question?
Yeah. So you installed Flex Slider by going to your other, like your template, and then copying over that. So should we copy it from Web 200 and put it in there?
Yes.
So if we used a different slider, it's fine also. Right?
It is, but you might want to consider Flex Slider. And that's where, do you remember where I have the directions on how to put Flex Slider into your page? So if you don't, if everybody doesn't remember, for directions on how to get Flex Slider into your website, under my HCD 532, section of my site. Create an image slider with jQuery. And that will show you how to, oh look, that design looks familiar. It'll show you how to download Flex Slider, what files you need to put where, the CSS file, the fonts folder, the jQuery. It'll then show you what you need to do to connect the jQuery, the JavaScript, and then lastly, where you need to put the Flex Slider markup, which that's where I replaced it with the blog info functions. Okay. I might recommend that. Okay, so did you have another question, Dwayne?
Yes, it is. Going back to your widgets, you making a third widget, the contact info, is that going to become a loop eventually, or does that become, or is that static? I envisioned it not changing.
That is where, when we do the widgets lecture, I can show you how to put a widget there.
Okay.
I think is what I'm going to do, because I never wrote up an official widgets lecture,
Okay.
and I think that's how I'm gonna check that off.
Cool.
Okay. So
I think because you have 3 widgets on home.html, and my third widget is contact info, and there is no loop to gather back this.
Dwayne is talking about this right here.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to use WordPress widgets to put a dynamic widget in this area
So
for my widget lecture down the road.
installing the widget, we're not creating the widget.
We are going to use a widget.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we need to put loop 2 here. What do I mean by loop 2? Well, if we go back to my lecture, we have now created the home page. Last week, we already set the front page to display as a static home page. To revisit that, we can go to the Spring 16 one here under the dashboard. And if we go to settings, reading, front page displays, instead of your latest posts, we want it to be a static page. We want it to be our home page, and we want our post page to be our blog page. So if we then look in our page tree, our home page is the front page, our blog page is the post page. Everybody remembers that, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then we got that. So customizing our static home page, this is where we took our stuff from our homepage template that we took just a moment ago, and we put it in front-page.php. And this is where then our flex slider didn't work, but we still have our widgets there. And this is where in my lecture, I put a static URL, but it was easier to use the blog info function. So that's what I did. So now, this is where then I just put the loop 1, right, into that first widget item. And here's where I need to do loop 2, okay?
Loops within loops?
No.
Okay.
So this is where we are going to do nested loops. Here's what we mean by nested loops. Well, actually, let's go back to our standard loop, okay? So our standard loop, like we've talked about, is basically if half posts while the post, put content here. So this is that way of doing it where you have the brackets instead of the colons, right? So you need to do a secondary loop where if we look at this query posts function, let's talk about the WP query, okay? There is another function called WP query that is somewhat of the newer way to do it. Because we are doing a very lightweight secondary loop, we are going to be doing the query posts version here, okay? So what we're talking about then is a secondary loop where what we have to do is we go to my codex here or my GitHub. If we have this first loop, right, that has functions like the content in it, or the title, the permalink, trust me when I say, if you do not stop loop one, if you get one thing out of this lecture today, it's don't forget to stop loop one using the rewind post function. Because if you don't, you will have everything from the first loop try to continue in the second loop. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? If you look at this loop right there, it's basically a standalone object. Is it not? Hey, if there are postings, while there are postings, get the post ID and show me the content, right? There are no directions to that loop. It's not very specific, okay? Down here, we're saying query posts show just the latest 5. And then we have another standard loop. If there are posts, while there are posts, get the post ID, okay? So if we don't give directions to this one, the secondary one, in other words, if I did not have that stuff there, it would basically try to get the content from the home page. Because what it's doing is the post. Remember how we broke that down? Where are we if we say the post? Let's go back up here. The post. Where are we in space in the website? Currently, well, let's say it like this. Well, what I mean by that is, if we are here in the About section, we're on page number. Give you a little how you can know what page ID you're on. If you view page source, and you go down to where it says short link. So this short link right there gets populated inside the WP head function. Remember how I said don't forget to put the head function in there? Page 13, post 13, right? So therefore, if this is the standard loop, wherever we are in the site, page 13, page 15, page 16, page 72, get the content for that page. That's how the standard loop works. So basically, those directions are built into the standard loop. So if we then wrote another loop and said, get the excerpt, what would we be doing?
We would be getting the excerpt from the current page that we were on.
You would be getting the excerpt from the current page you are on. Does that make sense? So therefore, we have then on our home page, so here if we go to my Spring 16 one, we already have loop 1 in action, or the standard default loop in action here, right? To get the content, or in this case, no, that is the content. It's out of the rich text editor here, right? But I want to grab then possibly headlines and excerpts, categories, titles, permalinks from whatever blog posting I want to. That's where WP Query comes in. So if I go to then my business sites, if I had it open, I like to open as many tabs as possible, Tanya, you know this, so, right? And we go to, so here I am in my Premium Design Works homepage. So we stop loop 1. We basically say those default directions from loop 1, stop using them. Don't forget those directions. Now using query posts or the newer function WP Query, and we're just going to use the old function like this, so you get used to this idea. Then we need to say, well, if this next loop is telling me to get the permalink, the category, the title, the excerpt, what do I need to get those for? The latest 5 postings. Okay. So if we then go back to where are we? WP Query, query posts, posts per page 5. Where is it? Where is it? Let me make sure I know where I am in that. Let's close some of these codex things out. So if we go to this link, the query post link, we can do it as well where we say, okay, here's the standard loop, while have posts the posts. They're just getting rid of the if you have posts because you're always going to have posts. You almost don't need to use the if statement. But what you can say is, while there are, put a list item and give me the title. Okay? So you can query then whatever arguments you want. You can then stop it at the end and say reset query. So this is an example of just a loop that you give directions to in the first place. If you don't give directions to a loop, it is just going to use the standard default, get whatever. Well, no. If you don't give directions to the loop, it's going to say, what page ID am I on?
Oh, then go from there.
And get whatever you're telling me to for that page ID.
Okay.
Okay? Or you can say, no, go do something else, but get X, Y, and Z for whatever I'm telling you to. Does that make sense? So in essence, it's a for loop. See ya, thank you. Does that make sense?
So the one thing I'm not quite understanding is, if we're directing it to get the latest 5 blog posts, why do we have to reset it to the beginning? Why is it not looking at all of the information and finding the most recent regardless of what page it's on?
Because I didn't give directions to the standard loop. So if I didn't give directions to the standard loop, it is using the default way to use the loop. So we have to stop that
So,
and then give directions to.
so the new code is not overriding the previous code?
Correct. It is a different, it's using the standard loop, right? But it's basically kind of like a break statement, right? In a switch statement, break, stop the loop. Right? So therefore, here's what, does that make sense to everybody?
Well, because they have different functions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Because this one up there, you want to get the content of the page. This one down here, you want to, let's write it out.
That's why they're not loops within loops.
What?
That's why they're not loops within loops, because they have different functions.
Right, they're not within each other.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So therefore, I want to rewind posts. Basically, I want to stop.
Am I interpreting this incorrectly, that rewind post is like saying go back to post 1? Is that not the right way?
Sometimes their language gets confusing, but basically rewind posts means stop whatever it's been doing.
Okay. So not really reset to first post.
Right. And then I want to say query posts, where this is where then as arguments, I want to give directions to, well, if I want to say what my latest postings are, right, I could give it directions of, let's say I wanted to say, get the ones from this category instead. Get the ones from this category. Down at the bottom here, you could say category 3, year 2004. Category 1, tag. So this is the old way of passing arguments through their function. So you'll see it using, so if we look at the WP query version of this, and we look at their arguments, so this is where they have the example of multiple loops. So these are then their arguments that you can put through the WP query, right? And again, this is where they do it, where they do an array, get them for author 123, array, get them all for author name, that author name, so on and so forth. Like I said, this is a bit more complex, right? But the old way of doing it was to use the query posts function and say category, whatever category. Query posts for attachment ID, whatever, right? So this is where I just want to, and there's some down here, right? Where we could do the array argument type way of doing it, or I'm just going to say show posts 5, if I got that right. I go back to my codex here. Show posts equals 5, meaning show the latest 5 postings.
So what if we wanted to show the earliest 5 postings? Is the language going to be, is there a?
You'd have to look up how to pass the argument.
So it's just going to be something I find in the codex?
Yeah. So now I've said query posts show the latest 5. And again, from there, I'm going to say if have posts while have posts post. So I'm just going to say here, stop, loop 1, give directions to loop 2. I also spelled, I spelled 2 correctly. Ah! 3-second rule.
1.
Stop. You made me do. I wrote stop. I wrote that twice. Oh my God, what's going on here?
Just start over.
No.
Rewind.
Oh my God.
He has the makeup.
She's gone now.
Yo, you're gonna need underscores in that, buddy.
I don't think
How'd that end up in there? Tanya's gone, so.
Gotta make up
All
for it.
right. So basically I did like I did. I did a secondary loop, right? That I gave directions to. So now if I then said, title, right? Get the title of the latest 5 postings. Oops. Yeah, but it's the latest 5 postings, right? So how do I fix it? What's missing? The list items, right? Again, we want to write out a list item for each one. Now they're in list items. Now what's wrong? Right.
Is it only showing 3 posts because it's only 3 posts?
Because I only have 3 in there.
So, yeah.
Correct. So I'm going to put an anchor. And for the href, again, here's where I'm using escapement, right? Before in the other one, I was using echo statements. This time I'm not using echo statements. A permalink. So basically I'm saying, here's my loop to grab the home page stuff because it's on page dot or front page dot php, right? Then I want to say, well, great, that was loop 1. Stop loop 1 or stop getting any kind of directions from loop 1. Give directions to loop 2 and then Start loop 2. For loop 2, make sure you have list items that get the title, but you also want to link those titles to the permalink. So again, it is going and saying, okay, here's the thing, the post. So what does it do in the standard loop here? I'm going to keep doing this until somebody answers me.
It's the post.
If there are posts, while the posts exist, you're grabbing the last one.
So it's basically getting it by the ID number, right? And saying, put the content. This one then is saying, for the posts, go grab the ID number for the last 5 of them, and then show the permalink for them and the title for them. I was trying to get you to say. Sometimes the whole guess what's in Mike's head game doesn't go off so well. Sometimes it goes better than others.
I'm not gonna lie. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Is that even close to correct?
I don't remember what you asked.
I said, because if there are posts, you grab the last post. With the head.
Well, it's basically saying the latest ones, get the ID number, and for that ID number, show me the title and the permalink.
Okay.
Now, what were you saying, Nico? You're not going to lie to me. That's a great way to start a conversation.
Yeah.
Are you confused as hell is what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I am. And I'm in a PHP class right now too.
Okay.
So I'm like, it's all kind of delicate right now for me.
Okay.
I just started understanding this class like this weekend when I was doing this
Okay.
assignment.
Here's what I'm saying. Try to make as much sense out of it as you can. How much sense did this make to me when I first started doing it? Not as much as it does now. Does that make sense?
Is it like, is it self-referential and then it like, okay, never mind.
What you'll start doing is, like I said, as you start putting the puzzles together and you realize, oh, now I need to do this. I can look it up and the answers are there.
Yeah.
The solutions are out there. I have to figure out how to create my own solution based off of the information I find, just like any other thing.
I know that's all it is Googling stuff. That's it.
And in this case, looking at the WordPress codex.
Yeah.
And, like I said, you'll start figuring out how this puzzle is all put together,
Okay.
right? So therefore, if I refresh this now, goes to that one, that goes to this one, and that goes to that one. Amy?
So maybe you covered this and I just haven't, because I haven't listened to all of Thursday yet. We can really say that. But why are we calling these widget items? Like, that's a little confusing to me.
Yeah, I get it. So I am calling them widgets. In other words, these are not WordPress widgets.
Okay.
You could call these just boxes. You can call them whatever you want.
So it's just your language, not
Right.
Okay.
When I'm saying widgets for this, the second one, and this one, I am not referring to WordPress widgets.
Okay. Thank you. So I don't have to talk.
You come up with whatever fancy schmancy name you want to. Okay, so oh, look at that, we're done. Okay, so Wednesday will be open lab, except for those of you that never show up, you're not allowed.
All right.
If you do show up, you have to buy Mark and I coffee. What?
Add Alec?
Okay, no,
No.
well,
Fair.
I don't know. Are you going to be helping people?
I'll try.
Sinkula out. I just dropped my whiteboard pen.